Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Troy here on the Absolute Life Radio Show. I've got a special guest with me on the phone today, and today's show is all about taking care of kids and families and creating health and abundance and longevity. And so I've got an amazing guest today, Mary Tocco. She's on the line with me, Mary. So I just want to welcome you to the show today.
Nice to be here, Dr. Troy.
So Mary, I know you've been researching vaccines for, I think it's like 28 years now, which is just incredible. We had you out here last year, and we had an amazing response. And, we sell your video in the office, and I know you've been doing a lot of research and doing a lot of talks around the country at different doctors' offices. So really, I just want to start with, how did you really get into this vaccine research and this topic of vaccination?
Well, years ago, before my husband and I, who is a chiropractor, before we had our children, we had the opportunity to see a lot of information back in the 70s that showed us that, when you inject things into the human body that don't belong there, you might have some consequences. And even though, we have an abundance of information available now, there was enough back then to help us. We didn't want to do that with our children. Plus, we also embraced what I call a vitalistic healthcare approach. We have this respect for the human body, that the power that made the body can heal the body, and that, really, if you understand normal immunity and how it develops in children, you don't want to mess with that. It's a delicate system, but it's very powerful when you allow it to develop naturally. Children have lifelong immunity, and we just felt that that was the better way to go. So I kept my research up during the early years of raising my children, and then in 1994, they were going to pass a bill in Michigan to remove one of our exemption rights, which is the philosophical exemption.
And Mary, do you have all three exemptions in your state?
Yes, we do. We have the medical, the religious, and the philosophical.
But
they were going to take away the philosophical, and we were very concerned about that because, to be honest, I want my children to have the very same rights I have, when they get to the age of having children, which is now. And we fought that bill. We formed a group, Michigan Opposing Mandatory Vaccines, and we fought it and we won. And to this day, we have a philosophical exemption as well. And that really began my passionate desire to educate parents, because I realized back then that people really don't even know how they're made. What's in a vaccine? How are they made? And how can they cause injury?
Yeah.
And that's when it began.
Well, I was at a church just recently speaking locally here in Portland, and one of the things I talked about, I was telling them, you're coming to speak here on July 25th at the Church of Christ, and I said out to the crowd, I said, a lot of churches will promote vaccination, and I said, I don't know if you guys know this, but some of the vaccines have aborted fetal cells in them, and you just see the crowd go, what? We didn't know that. So I know that you talk about ingredients, but what do you think is the most important thing for parents to know about the dangers of vaccination?
Just the very process of dumping a bunch of stuff in the body in a 5-minute period of time. A child can get up to 13 vaccines in one visit. That has never been studied for long-term safety. We do know that there are long-term consequences. And so they need to really think about that whole process, because when you dump it into the body through the blood system, every single organ in the body gets exposed to those bacteria, the viruses, all of the foreign heavy metals that go with vaccines, all of the things that they use to attenuate, phenol, aluminum. We have very, very high levels of aluminum in vaccines. Give you one quick example. The EPA safety level for aluminum exposure for an infant is 20 micrograms. The very shot they give a baby day one in the hospital has 225 to 250 micrograms of aluminum. Now, parents, think about that. That doesn't sound like sound science to me. That sounds like Russian roulette. You have to, your children have got to get rid of that heavy metal. And if they don't, there are lifelong consequences. And these are things that doctors don't even know and don't even talk about. And so, I don't want parents to feel bad if they vaccinated, but they have to start to look at what they're doing very carefully and know that there's better and safer options out there.
Yeah, and it's amazing because a lot of people think it's just a chiropractic issue, and really, I always tell patients, I go, I'm not anti-vaccine, I'm not pro-vaccine, I'm pro-health and pro-freedom of choice on what you should be able to do with your healthcare choices. But a lot of parents think that they're like, well, I have patients that say, well, I grew up in the polio days, and I saw what happened when people have polio, or I saw what happens if they get the measles or the mumps, but really, what most people credit, vaccines for eradicating illness and disease, but what are the facts on that? Because I know if you really start looking at this, the facts aren't really clear that vaccine eradicated disease.
No, in fact, only 10% of the whole world got the smallpox vaccine. And yet that's the one that they talk about all the time on the news. You know, whenever you hear the local health department or local news talking about an outbreak, they always say, because of our successful smallpox program, we've eradicated smallpox. Well, that just isn't true. Smallpox would have faded out anyway. And there are many, many sources that I will reference the day of the presentation that basically show that when they improved, you know, personal hygiene, better sanitation, good clean water supply, and a better variety and consumption of fruits and vegetables, that people, the whole environment cleaned up and people got healthier. And all of these infectious killers were not even an issue. Most of them, the death rate had been almost completely gone for almost 20 years before we began to mass vaccinate. And I will show charts and graphs to prove that. And people are shocked. They think, oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's you know, my wife started a moms group. It's Absolute Life Moms. That's the name of their website, absolutelifemoms.com, where she goes once a month and they meet with you know, women who want to raise healthier kids and you know, different subjects on just like what you're talking about, on how to create wellness and prevention and how to create a healthier family. And I think, you know, if moms got together and really understood this information, they would make better choices for their children. And yeah, you know, we can't beat them up for the choices they've made based on their information. But and